The genesis of a covenant. My beloved children, when you look upon the cross, what do you see? A broken body, an image of suffering, a symbol of sacrifice. But I want you to look further, past the rough-hewn wood and the dried blood, to see the story that began before time itself was shaped. I want to speak to you, not in the language of angels or lofty prophecies, but with the heart of a father, a brother, a friend who has walked the very path you now walk. I am the Word, co-eternal with the Father and the Holy Spirit. Before the first mountain was raised, before the first ocean was named, I was. In the perfect unity of the Trinity, love is our very essence. That love is not an emotion, but a creative current, an eternal energy that flows forth and brings all things into being. From that love, the universe was born. From that love, the galaxies turn in their silent dance. And from that love, the Father willed to create you. You were made in the image of God. What does this mean? It is not in your physical form, but in the deep core of your soul. You were given freedom, the most precious and perilous of gifts, the freedom to love, to create, to be in communion with us, but also the freedom to turn away, to doubt, and to refuse. In the primordial Garden of Eden, that communion was perfect. The sound of my footsteps in the cool of the evening did not frighten Adam and Eve. It was the sound of a familiar friend. But then a fracture occurred. A whisper of pride, a desire to be like God, crept in. The choice of freedom led to separation. The sacred bond was broken. Sin, like a spreading ink stain, seeped into the pure fabric of creation. It was not merely an act of disobedience, but a rupture in being. Humanity, once living in harmony with God, with nature, and with itself, now found itself naked, afraid, and alienated. From eternity, I saw that pain. I saw Adam and Eve hiding their shame. I saw Cain's hand stained with his brother's blood, bearing the mark of jealousy and violence. I saw generations upon generations born into a wounded world, carrying within them a longing for a lost wholeness, yet constantly falling into misguided paths. Sin was no longer a single event. It had become a condition, an invisible chain binding humanity. The law was given through Moses, like a lamp in the darkness, to show you right from wrong. The prophets were sent, like voices crying out in the wilderness, calling you to return. Offerings and sacrifices were made as humanity's attempt to mend the breach. But all of these in themselves could not heal the profound wound in human nature. The law could point out sin, but it could not grant the strength to overcome it. The prophets could call out, but they could not change hardened hearts. The blood of bulls and goats could be a symbol, but it could never wash a soul clean. A chasm had formed between a holy God and sinful humanity, an abyss that no human effort could bridge on its own. The love of the Trinity looked upon that abyss, not with condemnation, but with infinite compassion. Love by its nature always seeks to unite, to heal. And in the eternal counsel of God, a plan was set forth from the beginning of time. That plan was not to use power to arbitrarily erase sin, for that would violate the freedom we had given you, nor was it to abandon humanity to its own self-destruction, for love can never abandon. That plan was me, I, the Word, would become flesh. I would step into this broken world. I would take on human nature with all its limitations and fragility, yet without sin. I would live among you, sharing your joys and sorrows, feeling hunger, thirst, weariness, and even tears. I would build a bridge across the abyss, not with stone and wood, but with my own body. And to do this, I had to face the ultimate consequence of sin, suffering and death. I had to bear the weight of all the brokenness humanity had caused, from Adam to the very last person who will ever be born. I had to carry on my shoulders not just a beam of wood, but the sum of all your pain, all your betrayals, all your loneliness, all your injustice, and all your despair. This was not a decision made in a moment. This was a covenant of love, sealed in eternity. The carrying of the cross did not begin on the stone-paved streets of Jerusalem. It began in the heart of God, from the first moment humanity chose to walk away from Him. And so, I came, born in a humble manger, living the obscure life of a carpenter, and beginning my public ministry on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Every miracle I performed, every sermon I preached, every person I healed, was a first step on the road to Golgotha. All of it pointed to one moment, the cross, where the love of God and the sin of humanity would meet in a final, decisive encounter. And that is the story I wish to tell you next. Gethsemane. The bitter cup of freedom before the sound of the hammer striking the nails echoed. There was a heart-wrenching silence in the Garden of Gethsemane. That night, the air was thick, heavy with the dew and the weight of a decision of cosmic proportions. My children, you often think of my physical agony on the cross. But I want you to understand that the fiercest battle was fought not on Calvary, but here among the ancient olive trees, under a pale moon. I am God, but I am also truly human. Within me existed two wills, the divine will and the human will. My divine will was in perfect unity with the Father's, always desiring to fulfill the plan of salvation. But my human will, like yours, naturally recoiled from suffering and death. It wanted to live. It longed to continue breathing this air, to continue seeing the smiles of those I loved. As I knelt to pray, the full weight of what was to come crashed down upon me like a tidal wave. It was not just physical fear. My human mind could not fully comprehend it, but my soul felt it all. I saw the scourges that would tear my flesh. I saw the sharp thorns that would pierce my brow. I saw the weight of the rough wood on a bruised shoulder. I saw the nails driven through my hands and feet. I saw the humiliation, the mockery, the contempt of the crowd. But it was more than that. A deeper horror enveloped me. I saw the bitter cup the Father was offering. That cup contained the entirety of human sin. It was not an abstract concept. I felt it viscerally. I tasted the bitterness of the pride that caused Lucifer's fall. I felt the cold jealousy in Cain's heart. I was submerged in the flood of depravity in the time of Noah. I felt the shamelessness of Sodom and Gomorrah. I carried the betrayals of the kings of Israel, the indifference of the priests, and the hard-heartedness of my chosen people. And it was not only the past. I saw the future. I saw every war that would be fought in my name. I saw the times you would use my name to justify hatred. I saw families torn apart by selfishness. I saw the tears of abused children. I saw the loneliness of the abandoned elderly. I saw the despair of the addicted. I saw the greed that was ravaging the very planet the Father had given you. Every unloving act, every cruel word, every dark thought from the first person to the last was poured into that cup, and I, the sinless one, had to drink it. I had to let all that filth permeate my being so that I could transform it from within. Do you understand the revulsion of that? It was like forcing light to embrace darkness, forcing life to swallow death. My human nature screamed in silence. My sweat became like great drops of blood falling to the ground. It was the ultimate conflict. On one side, an infinite love that willed to save. On the other, the horror of a pure soul taking on the filth of the world. Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. That was the prayer of my humanity. It was the most honest cry from a breaking heart. I was not pretending. The fear was real. The agony was real. In that moment, I shared with you the greatest human fear, facing suffering and death alone. But then, my prayer did not end there, yet. Not as I will, but as you will. This was the decisive moment in the history of salvation. In absolute freedom, my human will submitted to the divine will. Love conquered fear. Obedience overcame resistance. I freely chose the way of the cross. I was not coerced. The Father is not a tyrant demanding a bloody sacrifice. It was our love, the love of the Trinity, that determined this was the only way to save you without destroying your freedom. When I stood up, my face drenched in sweat and blood, my soul was at peace. The battle was won. The rest, however painful, was merely the consequence of this choice. When Judas came with a traitor's kiss, when my closest disciples fled in fear, when the soldiers bound me, I no longer resisted. I had accepted it all. My children, whenever you face difficult choices in your life, between following your own will and following the path of love and truth, remember me in Gethsemane. Know that I understand the struggle in your heart. I understand your fear, and I am there to give you strength, to tell you that even in the darkest night, a yes spoken in love has the power to change the universe. The bitter cup you have to drink will never compare to the one I drank to the dregs for love of you. The road named Via Dolorosa. The road from Pilate's Praetorium to the summit of Golgotha was not long in distance, but it was the longest, most arduous journey anyone, divine or human, has ever taken. Men call it the Via Dolorosa, the way of sorrows. But for me, it was the way of love, each step an affirmation of my choice in Gethsemane. When the rough, splintered beam was laid upon my shoulders, its weight was immense. My back was already bruised and torn from the brutal scourging. Every fiber of the wood felt like 1,000 tiny thorns digging into my flesh. But my children, the physical weight of that wood was nothing compared to the spiritual weight it represented. On my shoulders was not just wood, but the entire burden of humanity. With each step, I felt the weight of pride. I saw the towers of Babel you had built and would build, the empires that rose and fell in their lust for power. I felt the self-sufficiency of those who believe they have no need of God. That burden forced me to the ground for the first time. My face struck the cold stone, dust and blood mingling. I pushed myself up and walked on. Now I felt the weight of jealousy and hatred. I saw the eyes of Cain, the slaughter of nations, the ethnic cleansings, the venomous words that sow division in families and communities. I carried on my back every argument, every discord, every refusal to forgive. The weight of this bitterness brought me to my knees. I fell a second time. Again I stood. Around me was a chaotic crowd. There were shouts, curses, mockery. "Hail, King of the Jews! If you are the Son of God, save yourself." Each word was a knife in my heart. I came to save them, and they challenged me to save myself. The irony was excruciating. But in that crowd, I saw other faces too. I saw my mother, Mary. Our eyes met. In her eyes, there was no condemnation, no doubt. Only a piercing sorrow and an infinite love. Her gaze did not take away my pain, but it gave me strength. It reminded me I was not alone. In your lives, too, there will be loving gazes that help you stand firm amidst the world's scorn. I saw Simon, the man from Cyrene, forced to help carry my cross. At first, he was reluctant, afraid. But as his shoulder touched mine, as my sweat and blood soaked his tunic, a change occurred. He was not just sharing a physical load. In that moment, he participated in my work of redemption. My children, I do not want you to be mere spectators. I invite you to be Simons, to help carry the crosses of your brothers and sisters through acts of love and service. I saw Veronica, a courageous woman who pushed through the soldiers to wipe my face. It was a small gesture, but in that world of violence and hatred, it shone like a star. When I gave her back the cloth imprinted with my face, it was a message. My face will forever be found in the poor, the suffering, the oppressed. When you wipe away a tear, when you bind a wound, you are wiping the face of Christ. I walked on, but the weight of human sin was overwhelming. This time I felt the weight of apathy and weakness. I saw the times you knew what was right but did not do it. I saw the times you witnessed injustice and turned away. I saw good intentions forgotten, noble resolutions extinguished by laziness and fear. The weight of all these should-have-beens and if-onlys crushed me. I fell a third time. This time I could barely get up. But love raised me. Love for the Father who sent me, and love for you, whom I came to save. I looked ahead. The top of the hill was near. Every final step was a struggle. My breath came in ragged gasps. My heart pounded erratically. Every muscle in my body screamed. The Via Dolorosa is not a path of failure, but of perseverance. It shows that my love is not a fleeting emotion, but an unwavering commitment. It does not give up when faced with hardship. It does not retreat from suffering. It goes to the very end. My children, in your lives, you will have your own ways of sorrow. There will be burdens that seem too heavy to bear. There will be times you fall. There will be moments you want to give up. In those times, remember that I have gone before you. I have transformed the path of suffering into the path of salvation. Your cross, when united with mine, is no longer a meaningless burden, but becomes a means of purification and fruitfulness. Let me walk with you, and I will help you up after every fall, until you too have reached the end. Golgotha, a symphony of love and suffering, the summit of Golgotha, the place of the skull. The name itself is grim, yet it was here that the greatest symphony of love was performed. Here heaven and earth met. Here the holiness of God embraced the sinfulness of man. Here life and death waged war. When they stripped me of my garments, the wounds from the scourging were torn open again. The blood flowed anew. The nakedness before all eyes was the ultimate humiliation, but it was also a symbol of how I came to you with nothing hidden, with a heart laid completely bare. Then they laid me down upon the wood. I felt its roughness against my back. I looked up at the sky I had created with a word. I saw the clouds drifting, the birds flying. A world carrying on, seemingly oblivious to the momentous event unfolding. The hammer rang out. Thwack! The large blunt iron nail was placed on the palm of my hand. These were the hands that had blessed children, healed the sick, multiplied the loaves. Now they were being nailed to wood. As the hammer fell, a universe of pain shot through my arm, up my shoulder, and exploded in my brain. Every nerve screamed, thwack! Another blow on the other hand. Then they nailed my feet. To do so, they had to stretch my body, dislocating my joints. Pain was piled upon pain. In the midst of this unimaginable physical agony, do you know what my thoughts were? I did not curse my tormentors. The first words from my cross were a prayer for them. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They did not know. The soldiers were only following orders. Pilate just wanted to keep his position. The chief priests and scribes thought they were defending the law. The crowd was swept up in mob mentality. Judas thought he could force my hand. Each one acted in their own blindness, veiled by fear, pride, greed, and ignorance. They were a microcosm of all humanity. You too. How many times have you hurt one another and hurt me without truly understanding the consequences of your actions? And so, I asked the Father to forgive you all. When the cross was raised, a new wave of agony washed over me. The entire weight of my body hung on 3 nails. To breathe, I had to push up with my nailed feet, scraping my shredded back against the rough wood. Every breath was torture, but from that vantage point I had a panoramic view. I saw those who were mocking me. I saw the disciples hiding in fear from a distance. I saw my mother and John, the disciple I loved, standing at the foot of the cross. My heart went out to them. I could not leave my mother alone. Woman, behold your son. Then I said to John, behold your mother. In that moment, I gave my mother to humanity, and humanity to my mother. I established a new family, the church, born from my pierced heart. Beside me were 2 criminals. One joined the crowd in reviling me, but the other, in his final moments, saw the truth. He did not ask me to save him from physical death. He asked for only one thing. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That humble plea touched my heart. Amidst the shouts and jeers, a soul found salvation, and I promised him, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. My children, no sin is so great that my mercy cannot forgive it. All it takes is a flicker of faith, a sincere plea, and the kingdom of heaven is open to you. Then darkness covered the land, an unnatural darkness. It was the outward sign of the spiritual battle taking place. I was taking upon myself the separation from God, the ultimate consequence of sin. I, who had always been in the bosom of the Father, now felt the void, the loneliness, the abandonment. To save you from eternal separation, I had to experience it. And from the depths of that agony, I cried out the words of the psalm, my God, why have you forsaken me? This was the lowest point, the abyss of suffering. I had become one with your sin, and therefore I felt the separation that sin causes. But even in that abyss, my trust in the Father never wavered. I knew his plan was still unfolding. Having endured all things, I knew that it was finished. The new covenant was sealed in my blood. The price of redemption was paid. The gates of heaven were opened. And I uttered, it is finished. Finally, I commended my spirit into the Father's hands. It was not an act of surrender, but an act of perfect trust. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And having said this, I bowed my head and breathed my last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in 2, from top to bottom. The barrier between God and humanity was destroyed. The earth shook and tombs were opened. All of creation bore witness that something of immense significance had happened. The symphony had reached its final note. A somber note, but not an ending. It was merely a pause, awaiting a more glorious dawn. The resurrection. When love wrote, the finale, death is the final word in every earthly story. It is the ultimate silence, the wall that no one can pass. My body, cold and lifeless, was taken down from the cross. Those who loved me hastily prepared it for burial and placed it in a new tomb, and a great stone was rolled to seal the entrance. To the world, the story of Jesus of Nazareth was over. A prophet was dead. A king had no kingdom. A dream had been shattered. The darkness of the tomb was absolute. The silence was complete. This was the domain of death, where it reigned supreme. It had swallowed prophets, kings, the rich and the poor alike. It believed it had swallowed me too, but death made one fatal error. It did not know that the one it held captive was the very source of life. In the silence of the tomb, the power of God was at work. The love of the Father, through the action of the Holy Spirit, poured itself out upon my dead body. That love was stronger than the hatred that crucified me. That love was stronger than the decay of the flesh. That love was stronger than the power of death itself. And then, at dawn on the first day of the week, the impossible happened. My heart began to beat again. The blood which had stilled began to flow. The breath which had ceased filled my lungs once more. The light of divine life flared up in the darkness of the tomb. I arose. I did not return to my old life like Lazarus, who would have to die again. I entered a new state of being. My body was still the body that had been crucified. The nail marks in my hands and feet and the wound in my side remained, not as scars of defeat, but as eternal trophies of victory. But now it was a glorified body, no longer bound by space and time. The stone that sealed the tomb, a symbol of the finality of death, was rolled away. Not to let me out, for I had no need of a door. The stone was rolled away so that you, my people, could look inside and see that the tomb was empty. My resurrection was not a magic trick, nor a mere resuscitation. It is the central event of all history. It is God's final and most powerful statement. It declares that love is stronger than death. Forgiveness is stronger than sin. Light is stronger than darkness. Hope is stronger than despair. It proves that what I preached was true. It proves that my sacrifice on the cross was not a meaningless tragedy, but the greatest act of redemption. The cross, once a gruesome instrument of torture, has now become the key that unlocks eternal life. When Mary Magdalene, Peter, John, and the other disciples came to the tomb and found it empty, they were confused and afraid. But when I appeared to them, their sorrow turned into unspeakable joy. I showed them my wounds, so they would know it was truly me. I ate with them, so they would know I was not a ghost. I explained the scriptures to them so they would understand that all of this had been foretold, and I gave them peace. Peace be with you. This is not the peace of the world, which is merely the absence of conflict. This is the peace of God, a peace that comes from being reconciled with Him, with one another, and with oneself. This peace is only possible because sin has been forgiven and death has been conquered. My beloved children, my story does not end at Golgotha. It ends with an empty tomb, and it continues in the life of each one of you. Because I have risen, you too shall rise. Death no longer has the last word. It is merely a doorway into a new life, an eternal life in the love of God. Whenever you feel you are buried in the tomb of sorrow, failure, sin, or despair, remember that the same power that raised me from the dead is at work in you. The heaviest stone can be rolled away. The darkest night will give way to dawn. The cross and the empty tomb cannot be separated. One speaks of the cost of love, the other of the victory of love. One shows the gravity of sin, the other the infinite power of grace. Live as people of the resurrection. Do not be afraid. Go forth and proclaim this good news. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia.